Okay, welcome back to the program. We continue, and the next topic are deepfakes, and the title of the lecture is Deepfake Justice. The speaker is Agnes. She's a researcher at University of Malta. So yeah, I welcome you, Agnes.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
Wonderful.
All good.
All right. I'll just dive right in and I'll do a little bit of an introduction of myself. I'm indeed a researcher at the Mihai Viteazul National Intelligence Academy in Romania and the University of Malta. And my background originally is human rights law. And I'm approaching deepfakes through both this lens of justice as well as through my research, which really focuses on national security and intelligence. So if you're wondering, what does all deepfakes have to do with intelligence and justice? We approach this kind of topic from a holistic, what some would call a human security perspective. So manipulation of the stock market is a human security issue. Any type of manipulation of digital services is a human security issue. So that's why today I'll be talking to you about deepfake justice. I imagine a lot of people might not know exactly what a deepfake is on the computer science side of things. And I'll be very honest, I'm not a computer scientist, right? So I'll walk you really through the basic steps of this, just to give you a little bit of an idea of why deepfakes right now are starting to sort of become more popularized, why they're now in such a fast speed moving forward and getting better and better all the time, and why, with that in mind, I predict that we're really going to see an incredible fast-paced sort of application of deepfakes across the board. Now, before I start this off, I just want to be very clear. There's some super cool applications of deepfakes out there. What I'm going to focus on today is why there's need of regulation and in what fields. But I want to make sure that I'm not sort of the doomsday sayer, like we should ban deepfakes, because we shouldn't. There's really great applications. I just feel that with such a new technology that has such an immense impact, we need to be a bit more aware of what it can do and how we might be able to legislate for it. So deepfakes can be created in a number of ways. Some of you might know the apps that do the face swap, right? Your face is swapped with that of a friend, or the filters. And in essence, that is sort of what you can also do with the deep fake. I can post my face on another person's body. We saw that in a lot of the very first generation deep fakes. And I'm sad to say most of that, like higher than 90% of that, was famous women being deep faked into pornography videos without their consent. That didn't really get a lot of attention, sadly, as a lot of these problems that are considered women's problems don't get that. And so that sort of was left to continue and to develop in an unregulated space. And then we started seeing deepfakes where there was creation of new content through this AI and machine learning technologies. So incredibly new faces were created just by a machine, people that did not exist. And similarly, what we saw that kind of combines that is that we saw the idea where you swap a face and you just take the features and the movements of a face and you transplant those movements to an existing video. And that's how you can actually, from the source, your own face, mimic what you're saying and doing in another person, in a video with another person. So a lot of this is done with GAN networks. That is basically a technology where computers are being, one of them is sort of filled with data, say pictures of a dog, and then it starts to create its own pictures of a dog. Another computer says, well, that's not a dog. It doesn't look like the pictures we've been fed in the database. And then the first computer was like, okay, well, let me create a better dog. And so they kind of go back and forth in this game until the second computer can no longer distinguish what is a dog that is created by a computer and what is a dog that's actually a dog. And these are rapidly getting better because there is just more computing power out there. Also, why didn't we see this 15 years ago? because basically we didn't put that many images online. The amount of images you can now find online and use to train your computer models is immense. Everybody now has a camera in their phone. So just the availability of data is really important to the creation of deepfakes, which is also, again, why the very first deepfakes were of celebrity women, because there's so many pictures of them online. However, as these networks are getting better, we need less and less data, so pictures, basically to create a deepfake. The very good ones still require a lot of data, but you know, you can get away with a decent enough sort of deepfake of fewer and fewer pictures. So on the good side, this is, you know, an increasingly democratic technology. You can create your deepfake with your sort of like computer that you could buy at the hardware store. You don't really need specialized equipment. A lot of the code and programs are open source. Some of them are ready for sale or download in an app format. So you don't really need any programming at all. So it's an increasingly democratic sort of tool, but that comes obviously with its downsides when not everybody uses that tool in sort of a fun and non-nefarious way. So that's just a little bit on the background on what exactly are deepfakes in the technical sense of the word. So moving on to, as I just said, you know, what is real? Here's a picture. It's from the website. This person does not exist. Obviously, that creation did not go so well. This grandma, however, is a lot better already in terms of, you can kind of go, okay, there's a little bit going on in her earrings that's not quite the same, bit weird. But by and large, you know, the picture is quite good. This kid looks, you know, decent enough. You could probably find that picture online. This guy looks like a fairly normal human being. This little kid, again, normal. She looks, you know, again, there's a little bit of sort of a red shade in the side of that picture going on, but still. And that lady looks, you know, somebody you would find maybe on Tinder. None of these people exists. These are all computer generated individuals. So what is the risk? Some of you might have seen the Tom Cruise TikTok. And this is a takeout of, on the left-hand side, the actor that they used, and on the right-hand side, they've pasted over Tom Cruise's face based on, again, all this data that they fed the system from Tom Cruise. There was so much debate, is this really Tom Cruise? But, you know, if you could do that with Tom Cruise, you can do it, as you can see, with Barack Obama. You can do it with Donald Trump. You can make little dance videos. That's all great. But basically, so what you could do is you have your source sequence and your reenactment. Your source would be you, and you can have anyone reenact it. This is actually a really great deepfake of the videos of Jennifer Lawrence and then Steve Buscemi's face on top of it. You can find it on YouTube. And it was really, in the early days, one of the best done videos. And she's just giving a speech, and it's uncannily good. But, you know, moving on to Jennifer Lawrence, I tweeted this a couple of days. She had actual nude pictures leaked to the media a couple of years ago, and she opened up in an interview and said, listen, this for me is an ongoing trauma, and it will last forever, because every time, you know, you go to a party, people are going to just whip out their phone and find a nude picture of me. They're never going to go away. So the question that I asked is, you know, first of all, why is trauma in inverted commas? But most of all, we know from research that victims that experience this, even if the material is not real, even if the material is a deep fake, they experience the same sort of trauma. So on the individual level, the risk of personal attack, of sextortion, impersonation, people saying, look, I'm going to make this deep fake sex video of you. I'm going to send to all your coworkers unless you pay me, unless you do sexual favors for me, or really just to make sure that somebody's reputation is damaged. Imagine the effect that has if you would ever like to have a career in politics. Imagine the effect that would have if, you know, you apply for a law firm, or, I mean, I don't know any employers that nowadays don't Google the people that, you know, they are going to interview. So the impact of this is lasting. It is both in terms of tangible effects, so your job security, these types of things, as well as your psychological influence, and therefore the individual risks are most certainly there when it comes to deepfakes. Now, that's not the only risk, right? Because reputational damage is personal, but your person might be a brand. If you're a famous person, you're an actor, you're an athlete, your person is your brand. But also, sometimes your person is so incredibly intertwined with an organization that either you work for, or you've set up, or a cause, or a profession, that damage that's done to your person resonates in the brand. So take, for instance, take Serena Williams, famous tennis player. Her brand is not only her person, but it's about tennis. It's the entire profession around that will have a ripple effect if that is attacked. And there's actually an example of this. We had Rana Ayub, a journalist in India, who was victim of a deepfake sex video that went around. Together with that, she got doxxed, so her personal details, including her phone number, were put online. And she basically had to leave the internet because people would just call her all the time, day and night, asking her for sexual favors, threatening her, threatening to harm her family. And that kind of comes with also the profession, because that happened because she was a journalist and because she was speaking out against, this was a rape case of a little 8-year-old girl. So those are intertwined when you look at the reputational damage on the personal, but also on sort of the more organizational level. Now, of course, there's risks when people are being impersonated. There's risk that other things are manipulated, stock market prices, manipulation of trade deals. Imagine a CEO of a company the night before their company, goes to the stock market. They're being filmed in a deep fake, saying something about their company not being worth the value at all that it's valued at the moment. Those kind of things can seriously distort economic processes. They're all built on trust, right? So you take away the trust, these types of organizational risks become very, very real. Defrauding of companies through, basically deep fake phishing has already happened. There's at least 2 cases that are known, one in the UK and one, I think, in the United Arab Emirates, where, somebody got a phone call of the CEO, turned out to be a voice deep fake, and companies were defrauded. And then eventually you also get towards manipulation of evidence. What if evidence is admitted to a court of law that turns out to be deep fake evidence? And how are witnesses supposed to deal with that? How are perhaps juries, if you have those in your country, supposed to deal with that? So those are all sort of the organizational risks around that. Now, if we sort of zoom out even further, we look at societal risks. And here I'm really talking about, entire groups of people that are minorities or professions that are being harmed because of deepfakes. And that could be because a religious leader is deepfaked and they're saying things about another religious group that leads to defamation. Politicians that put an entire minority group into the corner, your sort of anti-Semitism, for example. And that could really whip up sort of people who strongly believe in that leader to actually move towards, harm towards those groups. Furthermore, if we cannot trust what is real, we start to see a decrease in trust in civic processes. And we saw this in the United States on January 6th. We saw, the campaign that said, well, the election was stolen, even though there was no evidence for that. If these kind of rumors are fueled by deepfakes, then the trust in civic processes will decrease even further. And that's really our entire social contract that most democratic societies are based on, that then starts to crumble. And with that, with those 2 societal risks really comes increased risk of polarization. Are people being pitted against one another by strategically placed deepfakes? Imagine a fake of, American troops, for example, burning a Quran. Well, then immediately You will have people taking protest. They might turn violent. Polarization, even though, if you debunk that, the truth will always lag so far behind. The harm is usually already done. So those are some of the societal risks that I really wanted to briefly highlight. And really, that is sort of the super quick overview of what sort of the dangers can be of deepfakes. Again, deepfakes can be used for amazing purposes. They have found their way into culture institutions, musea. They've brought, basically deceased painters and even paintings alive. It's being trialed for people to use as therapy. So, for example, people who've lost a child or a loved one, to really overcome that trauma. So there are amazing ways in which deepfakes can be used for good purposes. We're now also seeing the commercialization of deepfakes, and again, there's in principle nothing wrong with that. But if there was one thing that I would tell all of you who are watching right now, like one thing you need to take away from that is that these things need to happen with consent. So if you're making a deepfake of your friends, it's all really great until it's not. So, make sure that everybody's on board. Now, there's of course some leeway. There's, for example, take satire, which can be a very powerful tool in sort of addressing particularly political dialogue. I think there still should be that room to do that, but really, from the get-go, you should think about the idea of consent, of putting somebody else's face either in a video that they've never appeared in, or altering that video in a way where people might have a problem, seeing that it's altered. And then we also get to, okay, well, then what should we do about this? Personally, I would be a favor of having disclaimers. We see it in television all the time. This show has product placement. No animals were harmed in the filming of this film. You can actually put disclaimers in that without it really distorting the experience of the viewer. So I think we should really look into where can we go within sort of, the realm of allowing creativity to exist. Where can we go to really protect those people that have suffered the greatest harm? And again, including, I'm going to go back to it, but including the women who've been in the receiving end of deepfaked, what is a terrible word, but revenge porn, which we should really brand as image-based sexual violence, because that's what it is. It is sexual violence in the end. So with that, I thank you for your attention. I know this was a super quick sort of run through really, of what deepfakes are. And I'm happy to answer any questions now, or if you, my contact details are there. So if you have any questions later that you think about, feel free to reach out, and I'll hand over the floor back to our moderator.
Yeah, we have one question. How hard is to detect a deepfake, and are there any tools we could rely on?
It is very hard, and with that I mean that there are tools. They are very expensive, very time consuming. So I know that because I've worked with the Netherlands Forensic Institute, for example. That's where they use these types of tools to try to detect, is a video deepfake or not, because deepfakes are effectively being used by perpetrators of child sex abuse to obscure their own identity. So those tools exist, but they're just really not available for, sort of everyday life. And again, they're not 100% sort of 100% foolproof. The other thing that's important to note in that sense is that a deepfake doesn't need to be great in order to do harm. If you look at this example I gave of, either Quran burning or any sort of reputational damage, just like disinformation and misinformation, that spreads so fast. Even if you've debunked it, it's too late kind of to catch up with all the societal, sort of responses that you've already sort of gotten. So yes, there are some tools. I don't think it's necessarily the solution.
Yeah, maybe one more question on distribution channels and social media platforms. So, for example, there's a video, and we know for a fact that it's a deepfake. Does, like, for example, Twitter or Facebook or WhatsApp or messaging apps, do they have any technical solution for that?
I mean, again, they're also looking at sort of like screening. What can we do in terms of detecting it? And once they detect it, what they could do, depending on their policies, kind of put a warning label on it, right? And you see that kind of with Twitter happening, where it's slightly different, but where there's state media or state sort of correspond, they say, okay, listen, this is a video, or this is an account that is run by this particular government. So you could technically do something like that as well with videos that are uploaded. So listen, we believe that this is actually not the synthetic media, sort of the catch-all phrase. So if they were to have a policy on that, that's something they could do in order to make people aware. And we do see that once people are more aware, they kind of go, oh, okay, let me take a step back and maybe not believe it as much. But still, if you look at the really polarizing disinformation, even that might not have its intended effect.
Okay, that's all questions. Thank you, Agnes, for
You're
being
very
with us and for the great presentation. And we will continue in a few minutes. So see you soon.